All righty, it is straight up 6 o'clock. Welcome to the debate for your District 5 candidates. My name's Ann Ladd, and I'm really been genuinely thrilled to see so many people here. The organizers of this event are members of the transition team that are not candidates, and every effort has been made to make this as fair and impartial as possible. And to that end, we are pleased that Jim Spiewak has agreed to be our moderator tonight. Jim is an award-winning reporter and anchor with more than 15 years of experience as a journalist. For the last 7 years, he's covered Utah's most pressing political, legal, and community-driven issues for KUTV, the CBS affiliate in Salt Lake City. He's a recipient of the prestigious Edward R. Murrow Award, and has built his career on sharp investigative reporting and clear, engaging storytelling. And we are very honored to have him as our moderator tonight. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Ann. Appreciate it. One quick note to the candidates. Just put the microphone close to your mouth like this so anyone in the that's watching virtually can hear us. Real quick, the debate rules is going to be 75 minutes. We will start with opening statements from both candidates, and then we will get into the questions. Just a quick brief on the questions. The committee did not give me questions to ask. I listened to them on what a lot of the pressing issues in the Valley are. I did write the questions myself to make it very fair and impartial for everyone. So we're going to go through 6 questions where there is a bit of a rebuttal from both sides. I can interject and ask some follow-ups, and then we'll kind of get into rapid fire near the end. So with that, I do have, if I can find it here, just a quick little opening remark to kind of get things going. So good evening and welcome to tonight's debate for the first City Council of the Ogden Valley. This is a historic moment. As I learn more about this, residents are being asked to chart the course of an entirely new city from the ground up. The decisions made in these early days will shape everything: how the city funds and delivers essential services, how to manage growth while protecting the valley's character, and how to balance independence with cooperation from the county. Candidates, they're going to share their vision and answer some questions drawn from the feasibility study, the general plan, and then some overall resident feedback that I received leading up to tonight's debate. The goal here, very simple: to give you, the voters, the clearest possible picture of who is ready to make the choice that come with building a city from scratch. So with that, I would now like to allow tonight's candidates to introduce themselves and then to give a 2-minute opening statement. And we will start. 1 second here. Okay, yep. 2 minutes to start. Dan, we'll start with you if you would like to go ahead. Introduce yourself and your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Dan Davenport. And I first want to start off by thanking the Ogden Valley Transition Team for this opportunity and for all of you coming out this evening to listen, to learn, and to be involved. It will truly take all of us in order to be successful. Growing up in Bountiful, I often had a chance to come up to find you and the Valley. But it wasn't until my wife and I came up over 4th of July that we really felt the magic of this valley and knew it was somewhere that we wanted to make our home. We had a delightful breakfast at Eden Bowery, came over here to Huntsville, watched the parade, watched the patriarchal program, went over to Liberty, and experienced the fireworks. The spirit of community and the small town feel was infectious, and we wanted more. That is why I'm running for City Council. I want to protect that magic through servant leadership, through disciplined planning, and through clear transparency, full transparency. I want to protect our open spaces and our farms. I want to manage wisely our resources, and I want to make sure that every neighbor is heard. This isn't about politics, at least it shouldn't be. This should be about stewardship. And as a new city, we need people that can work together and work with others to create effective budgets and laws. And ultimately, to allow us to have that protection of that rural character that we love so much. I'm not here to stir things up. I'm here to serve. I'm not here to divide. I'm here to unite. And I know that I can do these things to create that unity, to work with others, to protect the valley. And I'm asking for your vote as District 5 City Council member. Thank you.
Okay, and Don.
Is it live?
2 minutes.
Is it live?
You're good.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And thank you, Dan, for being such an honorable and worthy opponent. I really appreciate it. I've talked to hundreds of people over the last 3 months. I've asked 2 simple questions. What are you most worried about? And how can I help you? And I tell you what, it's the ladies who answer. Ladies like Cindy Hillstrom and Susie Wood and Kay Gilgore and Mary Lee Caldor. They're the ones who go, we are worried and we want this thing to be done right. And what they're saying is they're worried about our cherished way of life disappearing. They're worried about our agriculture disappearing. They're worried about our water rights and whether or not we're going to have water in a few years. And they want a small, effective, transparent, and accountable government. Folks, if we don't do this right in the next 2 years, we're not going to recognize the valley in 2034 when the world descends upon us for the Olympics. I grew up in Western Colorado, in Northern California. My cousin still farms in Cortez, Colorado. I rode a school bus an hour and a half each way to high school. I'm country. I get it. I didn't want to be a farmer because that's too much work, so I joined the Air Force and went to the Air Force Academy. In 1987, I graduated, and I married my high school sweetheart sitting back there. Next week, we celebrate 38 years married. This is about asking people what they need. I don't have all the answers to all the hard questions, but I have the wisdom to seek out people who do. I have served my entire life. 20 years in the Air Force, retiring as a colonel, and Stacy and I brought our family up. 13 years with the nonprofits that are so important to us. 38 years in business and government and nonprofits. I humbly ask for your vote on November the 4th.
Don Hickman. Okay, thank you very much. You see it. From here on out, I would please ask that you just refrain from your applause and let your voting do the talking from here on out. So in the interest of time here, we'll go ahead and we'll get started with the first question. And Dan, I will start with you. In my preparation for this and talking with and seeing some of the comments from residents who live in this valley, it seems like the overwhelming main issue is land use planning and growth. So I'd like to start there. Dan, it's assumed that Ogden Valley's current general plan will remain as the community's guiding document. Once elected, the City Council may update that plan to reflect regulatory changes and new interests expressed by the community. So here's the question. Should the new city adopt the existing general plan, alter it, or create a new one entirely, if you could explain?
That's actually a great question. And we are currently, as candidates, in the process of working on the general plan. We're evaluating it, trying to keep the character that's there, because a lot of work and effort went into that general plan. So the idea is not to scrap it and start from scratch. The idea is to look at it, evaluate it. Obviously, some things need to be taken out because we don't have Ogden Canyon, we don't have Powder Mountain, so we can't just adopt it right from the scratch or right from one to the other. But we do want to keep that unique character because that is our vision. And if that vision is intact, then we can write good laws, good ordinances, good planning, good zoning, so that we, again, can keep that idea of a rural character, open spaces, love of nature that Ogden plan talks about.
Let me ask a quick follow-up right there, since we still have a little bit of time. And again, the time cue cards will be right in front here. Preserving open space while accommodating reasonable growth in the 30 seconds that you have for here. How do you balance that?
It does have to be a balance. And just like the Ogden Valley Plan talks about, we have villages or clusters. So I don't see that going away. There's no way to have our open spaces and still allow for growth. Unfortunately, we can't shut the doors. I'm not saying we should. There are people going to want to come in. We just need to make sure that we protect the open spaces. We use the commercial, the retail, the open, like the vacant apartments and houses that are here. and try to have people go into that area.
All right, Dan, thank you very much. Don, same question to you. Should the new city adopt the existing general plan, alter, or create a new one entirely? If you could explain a little bit of detail.
Yeah, you betcha. And Dan explained what we're all doing, and there's 4 or 5 candidates out here. The amazing thing is we're all working together, some of us as opponents, but we're all focused on what we need to do for all of us, the citizens of this new municipality. The amazing thing about that general plan is it's an amazing document. A bunch of us were part of it in 2016 creating it, and it works. There's really good stuff in there. What it seeks to do is it seeks to balance property rights. If we're all landowners here, we have property rights with the fact that growth is going to occur. And we got into some hustles over the last few years with this thing called transferable development right that exists in the general plan and exists sort of in a couple ordinances. And the key will be, as we create our new general plan, because the candidates are working on it, and as we adopt the land use ordinance that are the law of the land that the city councilmen and women will vote for, those are the most important things as we look forward, because we get the chance to say what we want for land use going forward instead of account.
Let me follow up on something that you mentioned, these TDRs, these transfer of development rights. Should these TDRs be part of the land use code, in your opinion? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Now we get to the nub of things, don't we, right? She's telling me to stop.
Oh, I thought we were doing rebuttal and follow up on that. Just real quick.
Okay, so
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, if we could.
tell me where we are.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah, I think we're on. So TDRs, if you could
The
explain.
general plan doesn't work without something like a TDR as written. We've got land, we've got large landowners, and as Dan mentioned, we've got village cluster places where we allowed growth to occur. So in some form, the TDR, transferable development right, is going to have to exist in the future. I'm a proponent of getting the most important land use codes done, the things that affect all of us today. Have them ready at the end of December so we can function as a city. And then we need to take time, whoever wins the election, and really focus on creating a land use code that implements these things called TDRs in a way that we all want, that allows for this future where we hopefully can manage growth responsibly. So we need to pause. Those are going to take input from all of you. They're going to be one of the most contentious thing we do in the first 6 months of our city.
All right, and with that, Dan, I'll let you respond to that. TDRs, your stance.
Well, Don's exactly right. If we want to follow the general plan and have open spaces and villages, we have to have some sort of tool, which a TDR is, to allow that to happen. Now, unfortunately, the general plan wasn't followed. If the county would have followed the general plan, we would not be sitting here today, because it is a good plan. But it wasn't followed. In fact, from my understanding, there's not even an ordinance about TDRs. It was just something that slipped into some zoning aspects. And so if we can rein it in, create good ordinances about how a TDR is to be used, and make sure that it is used as we want, not taking hillside 40-degree angles and transferring it down somewhere else, but to allow it so that farmers can keep their land and still get some benefit for not developing it and then moving that to a clustered area.
Okay, Dan, thank you very much. Don, we'll start this next round of questioning with you. It is still under the umbrella of land use planning and growth. What is your plan to manage zoning, growth, and development so it doesn't outpace things like water, utility, infrastructure resources as this valley grows? Based on the general plan from 2010 to 2032, this valley population is expected to double. So what would be your thoughts on managing the zoning, growth, and development so it's the growth does not outpace it?
And you're giving me a minute and a half to answer that one.
Right?
That is why we have a city forming today. As I mentioned earlier, we control the ordinances going forward, not the county. So the first tranche of ordinances that pass need to serve us and be effective for us. The TDR ordinance that I propose will come into existence, and it will be one of the most important tools or managing how landowners consider selling their asset of this TDR and maybe being used in high density areas. Water matters. If there's not enough water, we should not be building. Who's here from Wolf Creek Water? Right? You're being sued over because of decisions made by the county a few years ago without proof that there is actually going to be water for that development. That should never happen again. I've got some really interesting ideas that I want to talk about for how to enable and incentivize the large landowners to create easements, conservation easements or agricultural easements, partnering with the city, partnering with those who have a lot of money, partnering with the state and feds in creating the ability over time that these farmers and others might be able to get value out of the property with an easement, putting that in a trust for their family, but keep using that beautiful chunk of land that's been in their family for 5 or 6 generations.
Okay, and Dan, for those voters that are going to be really, really concerned about how you on the council would manage zoning growth so that the growth here doesn't outpace things like utilities, infrastructure, what do you tell those voters?
You know, our growth has to be tied to resources. If we don't have the water, if we don't have the infrastructure, if we don't have a way to collect the wastewater, then we can't continue to grow and grow and grow. I'd actually like to look at this from a different standpoint. I, as a council member, want to push for supporting our farms, creating, agricultural events, having maybe a local rodeo. If we can have the farmers be successful, then they won't want to sell their land. If they can't make a living, then they will sell it. But if we can, as a community, create things that allow them, and we support them, farm-to-table aspects, all kinds of things like this, then the land stays where it is. It only gets sold if they decide if that chunk of money is better than continuing to enjoy the lifestyle as a farmer.
Let me do a quick follow-up rebuttal question here for 60 seconds. Water has been brought up. Are there specific things that you can think of right now that you could do as a council to protect finite water resources once the council is up and running?
I wish there was a ton we could do with water, but in the valley, the water is owned by the water districts, those that have water rights. So our ability as a council that I want to see is create a liaison to be in touch with all of the different water boards. I do not want to create one massive water board in the valley. Huntsville's issues are different than Liberty's issues, different than Nordic's issues when it comes to water. So I want to keep those independent. And I think if we're smart with our zoning and we limit the development, it will be okay with water. When we go crazy and just allow any development to happen, that's where the water's going to get in trouble.
And Don, same question to you with respect to specific steps that can be taken, if any, to protect finite water resources.
Well, there's steps we can take. I want you guys to know that I know water. My grandfather told me whiskey's for fighting and whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. Some of you don't drink whiskey, I know that. I've got a master's degree in civil engineering with an emphasis on water and wastewater. I've run 2 state-certified water quality laboratories in my life. I was responsible for water quality at air bases throughout Alaska, throughout Europe, Hill Air Force Base, New Mexico. I know water. I am endorsed by the leadership of several of the water companies. We need to get a new water study that identifies really the geohydrology, really the available water, really how much water is going to exist in 10, 20, 30 years with the snowpack change that we're facing. That should inform decisions on land use. I also think we should create a committee or a council or whatever you want to call it of the water voice. There's 83 water companies in this valley. They need to have a voice that they can bring to us, the city council, to tell us what we need to do.
All right, and I appreciate that. I want to follow up with something. You say you want to create committees. You need a new study. Do you think with the city just starting up, they have the financial resource to do stuff like that?
That's an interesting way to get into the financial question. How long do we have now? How long do we have?
Let's go a minute here.
So is the question money or water?
The question would be money, financial resources to do some of those initiatives that you were just.
So Dan and I and all the councilmen are knee deep in trying to figure out how much this sucker is going to cost. There's a lot of buzz. There's a lot of yelling and screaming out there about whether or not the feasibility study was right or wrong. What I, as the only Dave Ramsey coach in Ogden Valley who teaches people how to budget, know is we first got to know what it's going to cost. And so we, Dan and I and the others, are going through the exercise of getting bids so we actually know how much snow plowing and permitting and all those things we have to do will cost, to include maybe some studies. And when we're done, we'll have a soup to nuts list that will be somewhere between $4 and $5 million a year. Remember, we only have to fund the first 6 months, so 2 to 2.5. Once we know that, we'll know what we need to do for revenue. And I'm going to run out of time so we can't talk revenue. But that's reality. And a kudos to all of the candidates out here. We understand what a tough job this is.
And in the impossible 60 seconds, are the financial resources available to do some of these initiatives that you're talking about right out the gate?
Right out of the gate, I would say no. Year one, we probably not going to be able to afford to do a feasibility study. And it is important. I agree with Don. It needs to be done. There's been a lot of conflicting information about how much water we have, different studies saying different things. So, yeah, it needs to be done, but it's not going to be in year one. The good thing is, as we look at these numbers, it's not as bleak as it originally seemed. It could not be great, but we just have to try to get the numbers where we can't get until we're elected, and we can't know the full expenses until we're elected. But we are working to try to make sure that services that were offered by the county will still be offered to the residents of the city, and that there won't be any changes or breaks in those services that are required or wanted.
All right, Dan, let's go ahead and start off topic number 3. We kind of segued into the feasibility study. So based on the numbers that I was able to look at online, shows that the following funds would cover operational costs right out of the gate. Sales and use tax, 49%. Building, planning, engineering permits, 21%. UDOT funds, 16%. Property tax, 10%. Fines and forfeitures, garbage admin, business licensing fees, and state liquor allotment, 1%. Do you believe the feasibility study reflected the true costs of this incorporation? Or if not, what areas did you take issue with? And how would you address them?
I think the feasibility study did a good job as far as expenditures. I think it did a good job of laying out, here's the services we need to provide, snow removal, road maintenance, building, inspection, permits, all those things. On the side that it wasn't so great was on the income side. From my understanding, they were a bit optimistic as far as growth went. In reality, it may be half that. So when this was all presented to the valley, it would be, there's plenty of money to do this. It's not looking like that's the truth. But it's not dire. We still have ways to fund the city. We've talked about doing a transient tax so that people that are renting rooms will have to help contribute to that. I encourage you to buy local, because if you're buying local, we get money from that. Even if you're buying from Amazon and it's delivered here to the valley, we get money from that. So we are currently seeking gap funding so that out of the gate we have the funds that we need. You mentioned property tax. That is something we won't get for a while. We're applying right now so that we can get that sales tax as fast as possible. But again, there may be a little bit of a gap. We may, as city council, decide to issue what's called a tax anticipation note, which means you can invest in the city if you want, make an interest rate, and get something back. So the goal is to not raise taxes as much as possible, but we also need to make sure that the city's home.
And Don, Dan mentioned concerns around the income. Your thoughts on the feasibility study? Do you take issue with it? Your thoughts?
Well, I take issue with the feasibility study, no. It was based on 2023 data. They did the best they could, and they came out with numbers that supported the creation of the city. We can nickel and dime stuff on the revenue side. The 9% growth in sales tax is the glaring thing that we need to be concerned about. That sort of growth has never been more than 4%. So that's where the revenue, frankly, doesn't match up. What was the rest of your question?
just the feasibility study, are there areas that you take issue with, and how would you address that?
Yeah. So I'm a windshield versus rearview mirror sort of guy. We need to go forward and not rehash what happened in 23, 24, and with this feasibility study. It is what it is. What we need to know, like I talked about earlier, is how much is it going to cost to run the city? And like I described, we're doing it. How and whether or not we need revenue will completely depend on how much it costs. And we don't know that yet. So, like Dan mentioned, we will probably have to take loans out, gap loans. We hope that the county will say, here you go, here's an interest-free loan. Hopefully, they'll even say, hey, we raised a bunch of taxes, we're going to give them to you. Hope is not a way to run a city. So, I will not stand here and promise to you that I will not raise taxes, because I'm a man of character. What I will tell you is, we've got to know how much it's going to cost. We will make sure that we're getting value for the dollar. And if and when we got to get to the point where we might have to have other revenues, we're going to have a conversation about the hard decisions we have to make.
Don, let me, in the 1 minute rebuttal time that we have here, let the voters know, is there a cap if you do have to raise taxes that you would cap at?
Well, the cap, that's it. So the cap would be whatever that difference is between what it costs to have an effective, efficient, small city that serves all of us and how much revenue we're getting from the B&C funds, from the sales tax, from the impact fees, from the short-term rental tax. That we're going to raise tax. I guarantee every one of us is going to vote short-term rental tax, 1%, right? Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. So the cap will be, how much does it cost? How much do we need? That's what we're going to do. I'm going to do everything I can as a Dave Ramsey coach who teaches people to live on budget to get best value for the dollar. The expense side is where we need to focus. If we can't get it below the monies that we know we're going to get, we're going to have to take some loans to get through the first 6 months, maybe the first year, and we're going to have to make hard decisions on whether or not we do a sales tax, change some property tax, or do some other things.
Dan, same question to you. Income tax, would you be in favor of it? And if needed, and where would you cap?
Well, hopefully we can run it efficiently, but I agree with Don, I'm not going to tell you that taxes won't raise. To me, it is worth having to pay some extra tax for this opportunity that we have to represent ourselves. If we had, again, I don't want to look too far back, but to me, it is worth having local representation in this arena. As far as areas of tax, I don't want to see property tax go up. I'd rather it be something like a sales tax, because I want to be able to capitalize on the tourist dollars that are happening here, as opposed to just continuing to tax the residents. Now, I know a sales tax wouldn't affect all of us, but a property tax just affects us, and it doesn't get any of those tourist dollars. You know, it's hard to say what the cap is. I mean, I don't want to raise a whole bunch of money that we don't need right away. I want to cover expenses, roads, snow plowing, permits, making sure that we have auditors, accountants, legal representation. Those are the things that we need to cover before we raise money for more extravagant things.
So I got some 2 minute moderator follow-up time. We'll give a minute each. So Dan, we'll start with you on this one. With respect to starting up, do you, first off, do you support implementing a transient room tax? I guess that's just the simple yes or no.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then what would be your plan for startup staffing salaries for the mayor and the council?
We've talked as a committee, as a candidate committee, to try to outsource as much as we can. We're not going to try to hire anything right off the bat. We're going to try to contract. And that allows us to get someone that we need just hourly without having to say, you're on salary, and if we don't need you, you're going to still get paid. So we already have some great people that are interested in doing that, from engineering to, again, attorneys to accountants. So we don't foresee any hires right away. We can do this from a contract basis. And if they're a great contractor, then we can invite them to be an employee. But if we hire them right off the bat and they're terrible, it's much more difficult to get rid of them. As far as a salary, I think it is important that we get a stipend, very minimal, because if you don't have something like that, that's when people go to developers and say, hey, how about I get a consulting fee for all the work I'm doing? So I'm okay with a little bit, but very minimal.
Yeah, could you define a little bit?
I would probably say like $1,000 a month for each person. So in the year, I think that rates to be like $72,000.
Okay. Same questions to you first. Yes or no? Do you support implementing a transient room tax?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then your plan for startup staff aid to salaries for mayor and the council.
So, and describe what we're all talking about. It makes absolutely no sense for us to attempt to hire permanent staff right away. So we're almost certainly going to contract with, let's just say, our host here in Huntsville. We've asked them, would their clerk recorder like to work for us part-time too? He's salaried by them, we pay Huntsville to do. So soup to nuts, everything that we've got to do from roads to permitting to everything, we are looking at contract. We'll get the best value. A bunch of us are already working requests for proposals. We're beginning to call the various providers of it, and we will work our darndest off to make sure we get best value for all of you. What was the other, whether or not to pay us? I'm with Dan. I think we should be reimbursed for our direct costs. If I drive down to Salt Lake City to represent you, I shouldn't have to pay for gas. And I think it's reasonable that the mayor and the city council be provided some sort of reasonable stipend. I don't know if it's $1,000, something, but you know, what you get what you pay for when you do things for free. So let's get high quality up.
All right, let's go on to our topic number 4, which we kind of started to bleed into. I wanted to talk about more about the independent studies that were commissioned by the Lieutenant Governor's office and the opponents on if there is a tax surplus. But what if there's not? If growth does not keep up with those projections, where does the difference come from? We talked a little bit about possibly a transient room tax or a transient tax or possibly increase in tax. But Don, I'm going to start with you. What are some other ways that funding gap, if there is one, could be made up? Are we talking about bonds? Are we talking about telecommunication tax? Something else? Where else could that revenue come from?
I like this guy. He's going to the heart of the matter, isn't he? Where's the money going to come from? So I'm going to geek out a little bit. The new city can impose a 1% sales tax. If we do that, that's about $700,000 a year. The new city can change the unincorporated Weaver tax. That's that one little line item we all saw in our assessment. Right now, it's about $162 per $1 million assessed value. It's one of the smallest taxes. It's about 1.5% to 2% of what we're paying right now. So your city council people can consider raising that, changing the mill rate, and that's the property tax. We absolutely will do a short-term rental tax. We'll probably do a TV franchise tax. We can consider doing an energy tax. I'm scaring you guys, but these are the things that people like the candidates are going to have to decide with all of your input. We can put a 6% energy tax on natural gas and electricity, and that would generate a whole bunch of money. Should we do that, and why we would do that is the real question. And again, for me, it's understand bonds. I'm a Dave Ramsey coach. I break out in hives when people talk about taking loans. That we're going to have to take a loan just off from the doors drives me bananas. So I'm not in favor of us going to anything but absolutely necessary debt to get things going.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. Dan, same question to you. We talked about transient tax already. Talked about possible property tax. What would be some other revenue streams if the council needs to go in now?
So Don named most of them. You know, we have talked as a committee about our thoughts on that. Obviously, we have no ability to make any decisions, but we are aware of what's on the table. I don't like the idea of the energy tax. I don't like the idea of the communication tax. I would rather see us do something like a bond or the tax anticipation note. That allows the community to be invested. I'd rather go that way than just getting more debt and going with a loan that we do have to pay back. So my goal, my hope is immediately we can try to spur activities to try to increase our sales tax as far as just activity, people spending money, not necessarily tax anymore.
Reassure somebody that might be hesitant to take on a general obligation bond and repaying that debt, why that may be the better path forward.
It's an investment in the city, and hopefully everyone is optimistic about what we're going to be doing here. If we are not hopeful, if we are not optimistic, if we are Debbie Downers, if we're just saying this isn't going to work, then yeah, don't invest in the city. But the alternative of not having this be successful is not one that's acceptable to me. And so that's what I would tell that person is have some faith in the leaders that you've elected in this valley and invest in it, as opposed to us having to go to everybody and raise their taxes.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about money. If you had a response.
Dan and I disagree on a general obligation rule. We have to pay it back. So it's really taking our tax dollars today to do something later, and we have to pay it back with interest. So at some point in the future, if we have a general obligation bond supported by the good faith and credit of whatever we name our new city, and Susie, I'm looking forward to what you name it. We're going to have to pay that back. So I am firmly in the camp of we need to pay as we go. We're going to have to take loans at first because we don't have any money. We become a city on the 5th of January and we ain't got a dime yet. So we're going to have to take some loans, and those are the only ones that I can stomach as your Dave Ramsey coach in this valley. Pay as we go. We got to know what it costs. We got to figure out that we've got the absolute best value for service. We got to add it up. And whatever that delta is between how much it's going to cost and what we got, then we have to have the really hard conversation about which one of these options we're going to use to fund the city.
And Dan, 30 seconds if you want to respond to the critique of pay as you go versus taking on the debt.
I just want to clarify, we are going to have to take out that loan. I'm not trying to insinuate that we won't have to get some sort of gap financing. We are currently working with Zions Bank. We're looking at Golden West, maybe Bank of Utah. So I'm not disagreeing that we have to get that loan. What I'm saying is instead of raising taxes, I want to offer the option for a bond. Absolutely. And the bond has to be paid back. It can be paid back as we become successful and we see these other things implemented to increase our revenue as a new city.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next topic. This is really question number 5, if you can believe that or not. So talking about daily operations and services. We've been talking a lot about the money aspect of things, but daily operations, things are going to have to get done come day one. I think voters are really interested to know some specifics about that. So Dan, we'll start with you on this one. What specific contracts or municipal services would you prioritize as we transition beginning in January? Now, let's keep in mind judicial systems, jails, schools, libraries, and the fire department, as far as my understanding is, would still be done under the county. So what specific contracts or municipal services would you want to prioritize beginning in January?
From day one, and I can't say one's more important than the other, but from day one, we have to figure out how we're going to get rid of our snow, how we're going to plow the snow, and second is our contract for law enforcement. So we have talked with the sheriff. That's looking optimistic, but those are the two most important things from day one. Just right below that would be making sure that we're able to do building inspections and permits, because we do get revenue from that. So we do have to have an engineering contract with someone so that can be taken care of.
You in favor of fast tracking permits?
Explain.
Just to kind of get the revenue going, get those services up and running, or more methodical, because growth has been a big thing.
Definitely methodical. I don't want to fast track anything. We need to look at every single permit that comes through. Unfortunately, what has been happening for probably maybe 20 years is that everything that's come across the county's desk for any sort of development or permit has been stamped approved. So to me, there's no point to fast track. It's important that we are looking at what is being submitted as far as a permit and ideas and developments, and making sure that it's in line with the character and the values of our entire valley.
And Don, same question to you. What specific contracts or municipal services do you prioritize on day one?
Amazingly, Dan and I are on the same sheet on this, right? We've got to have roads and grounds. We've got to have law enforcement. And at some point, we've got to have the whole planning and permitting department. So those have to exist on the 5th of January. The county commissioners are going to toss us the keys and say, good luck, folks. Everything but schools and fire and EMS, we have to recreate, including the courts, everything. So that's the those essential services, we've got to have roads, potholes have to be filled, trash has to be taken out. What is the rest of your question?
What is sort of your order of importance for first? I mean, I guess the question, would potholes be more important than other things?
I'm gonna throw your question back at you. We can do it all. We've got the capability and the smart people that are candidates. We're right now working together to get to the point where we're getting bids, and we're going to go after bids and then contracts soon. We can do snow plowing in roads at the same time as we can do law enforcement, as we can do trash, as we can create a permitting department and a planning department. If the only thing that'll keep us from doing that is whether or not the 11 of us that are actually working with the volunteers of the transition team decide to do it. And I can tell you what, there's 5 or 6 of us in here today. Every single one of us is working 20, 30 hours a week right now, working our heinies off, making this work.
Dan, let me have you rebuttal in 60 seconds here. Your opponent here is saying we really need everything all at once. Is it feasible to do everything all at once, or are there some things that need to take priority at day one over others?
Unfortunately, by law, we have to do it all at once. The state statute is that we have to provide the same amount of services that the county was providing. So Dawn's right. It all has to be done. Now, to have someone say they're in charge of parks and recs and making sure that we have the grass cut, yeah, that's something that isn't going to be a priority. But everything else does have to go day one, or we potentially open ourselves up to a lawsuit, which is the last thing that we want to have.
So if you had to just, number one service.
Kind of like I answered before, I'm going to split 1 and 2. It's going to be snow removal and law enforcement.
Snow removal, law enforcement?
Yes. High five, Dan.
All right.
He is a test.
So let's
With all due respect, Jim.
let's talk about negotiating. You need to negotiate this stuff. You talked about being a financial coach, a money coach. What is your background in negotiating these contracts that will need to be negotiated?
Thanks for that great question. I've got 38 years in government, private business, and nonprofit. I've ran budgets from $5,000 a year to literally $10 billion a year. I've contracted multi-million dollar contracts. I've done $5,000 contracts. I've done it in the government when I was in the Air Force. I did it as a private businessman with a company that I had employees across the country, and we had a $30 million a year operation. And I did it for Ogden Nature Center. I've done it for Ogden Valley Adaptive, where I was the executive director and a member of the board for years. How we do this is we define the scope. What do we want? What do we all need for snow plowing? What do we need for trash? And then we reach out to the service providers and say, can you do it? Are you interested? And they say yes or no. And for those who say yes, we say, we're going to give you a request for a proposal. It's going to say, here's what we want, soup to nuts. Come back to us in a week or two and tell us how you're going to do it. And then we'll evaluate their proposal. We, the 12, or we, the 11, plus the volunteers that are helping us. And we'll make a best value judgment on the service, snow plowing, trash, law enforcement, clerk recorder. That's how we're going to do it. It's an awful lot of work. Peggy's out here somewhere. She's from the group that's doing IT. None of us are IT people in the candidates. We're like, we have no idea what we're doing, but we've got great people helping us understand what we need to do for these services.
Okay, Dan, experience in negotiating contracts to get the best bang for the buck for the taxpayers.
So my budgets don't have as many zeros as Dawn's. As a small business owner, and as a family with 4 kids, we learn our budgeting the hard way. Our income is this, our expenses are this, and we make it work every time. We don't have the luxury of necessarily running down the bank, because that's not wise. We're putting it on credit cards. We have to look at our budgets from that standpoint. And I've been doing that for the past 20 years. The important thing in negotiating is to get a lot of bids. And we are doing that as candidates. We aren't just going with the first person that says, I'm willing to offer you this service. We're trying to get 3 or 4, as many as we can, so then we can say, okay, here's what the market is bearing. And then we can go back and say, hey, we really like you, but this other person's offering this better deal. So at the end of the day, a negotiation is about people. It's about getting along with them, and it's about creating a win-win for both sides. If you go in like a bull in a china shop and then you just make people upset, you don't get a good deal. But if you can get to know people, and you can get majority, multiple bids, then you can create the best budget possible to make sure that your income is not exceeded by your expenditures.
Don, let me do a follow-up, starting with you. What leverage do you see the Ogden Valley having when negotiating these contracts, maybe with the county or with other districts or other agencies? Does this new city have leverage in any respect? Negotiating.
People want to be here, don't they? People want to move here. We're an exciting place. We are the first city to come into existence in a long time. People want to work for us. Kate Hoogland, one of our colleagues back there, said, you would be surprised at how many people have reached out to us and said, we want to be your lawyer. We want to be your accountant, your treasurer. We want to be your clerk for quarters. The big animals in the block are Weaver County. We're probably going to have to get a deal with them for snow plowing and law enforcement and all that. And to Dan's point, it's the relationships that matter. At some point, the roadblocks will happen. Someone will be elected, and we'll be able to go down there and shake hands and say, commissioners, let's go. The snowplows are going to be out here anyways. They got to plow Causey. The sheriffs are going to be out here anyways. They got to do Evergreen. And that's how we're going to get this done. It's going to be the relationships of the 6 people after the election on the 4th who take this across the finish line.
Dan, leverage that the city would have when negotiating these contracts against county or other agencies.
I think we do have some leverage in the aspect that we are a very unique city coming on board. If you think about like Marriott Slaterville, about 10 years old, or Urda down by Tooele, they're small, they're rural, and so are we, but we also have multi-million-dollar ski resorts all around us. We have a lot of investment that's coming into this valley because people want to live here, and people want to be a part of that. And so we do have that leverage to say, we want to be here for the long haul, for the long term. We are going to be successful. We are going to have revenue coming in because we are a tourist destination. And so I do think that will allow us to create better contrasts. Now, I agree with Don. We need Weaver on our side. They have the equipment, they have the ability, they have the experience. And if elected, I will do all I can to make sure that we have that good relationship, but that it's not being a win-lose. It has to be a win-win for all involved.
And I believe I still have about 2 minutes of moderator time on this last topic that I'm calling external relations. Dan, since you're standing, we'll start with you. A lot of the residents that I saw feedback from were asking, is there any conflict of interest that you may have in any respect going forward if you are elected to the council? So question being, do you have any conflict of interest that the voters need to know about?
No, I own my home up here, and that's it. I have no investment in any development. I don't have any relationships with the developers. Obviously, as a councilman, I will work with them, but I will not give them preferential treatment. I won't treat them better or worse than anyone else. But so no, I have no conflict of interest. Nothing that I feel like I'd have to recuse myself for.
And Don, same question to you. Any conflict of interest with developer relationships or anything like that is if you were to be elected?
Thanks for the question. I have zero conflict of interest with a developer, a real estate agent, a broker, anybody associated with turning dirt and building things around here. I do have other conflicts of interest that are allowed and appropriate. I'm a businessman out here. I have a license that says Weaver County. It will say whatever our city name is. Thank you, Susie, someday for a name. So that is a conflict of interest because the city council votes on the permits. Yes or no, you get a business license. So those are the sorts of allowable conflicts of interest that we have to expose and say, I have it. I'm on the board of director of Ogden Valley Adaptive Sports. We are a nonprofit here that benefits from it. So if I'm elected, I'm going to say, I'm on that board and I will recuse myself if necessary for stuff. But when the animating issue of why we're here right now, no. Stacy and I have a beautiful log cabin off at 9500, and that's the only property we own, and that's all I want to know.
That's what the people wanted to know. We appreciate the information there. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps it up for the rebuttal style. So I've got some questions here that will go probably give you about a minute or so, if give you both an opportunity to answer. So Don, we'll start with you on this one. Kind of under the growth and development, it's a lot of residential out here, mostly residential. I think would be fair to say, very little commercial base. Should the city encourage more business development or keep the valley predominantly residential?
We seek to represent you in District 5. District 5 is 90+% agricultural and forest. And I believe the zoning needs to look the same on January 6th as it did on January 5th. We do have some areas that are zoned commercial. There's one right over here owned by the Galts, RE20, and Chris is just going to sell someday. So I think it's appropriate and right for those properties at some point to get developed in the right way. And I see many, many small business people out there who I'm friends with. We should encourage those small businesses in our district appropriately with the right ordinances. Writ large in our new valley, if we want to have sales tax growth, we're going to have some business growth. That's period. If we don't want to have to pay more property tax at some date, we're going to have sales tax growth. So it sounds like I just said, good luck, Eden and Liberty. That's not the case. District 5 is rural. I will work hand in hand with the council people from the other districts and say, let's figure this sucker out.
Same question to you, Dan. So Ogden Valley, mostly residential, very little commercial base. Should the city encourage more business development or keep it predominantly residential?
I do think we should encourage business development, but within the current zoning. I don't want to create new commercial areas when we have commercial areas that aren't built out or aren't functioning. You know, Chris's is a commercial area. That could be an awesome, awesome business. It could help fund a lot for our city. I would love to see someone buy it and run it properly. But I don't want to start creating a bunch of commercial areas when we have commercial areas right now that aren't being utilized properly. So I do want to keep the zoning as it is. I don't want to change that. Except for one thing, there's a mobile home zone. I don't want that to continue. It is in our district. It will be grandfathered, so we won't be able to get rid of it, but I want to make sure that we don't get more things like that. So from day one, we're going to try to simplify the zoning, but we're not going to change it so that it becomes a bunch of commercial, a bunch of mixed use, and I'm going to push to get rid of form-based zoning.
Don, chance to respond to that. Do you agree with zoning, keep it as is, change it? And what other types of businesses do you think could thrive here in this new city? If you do say do business does need to come here.
So I think I already answered my opinion on District 5 zoning. Copy paste. I'm with Dan. We don't need to know. They can build one because it'll be grandfathered, but we don't need mobile ones here. The second part was...
What types of businesses would you envision coming here or trying to attract here?
I would love to see agritourism explode. I would love to see people who can capitalize on the recreational opportunities who we have. We have the Olympics coming in 2034. We have Powder Mountain. We have Pineview. I want to see small businessmen and small business women get rich off of the people who are coming here and skiing and swimming. Agriculture writ large. I spent a good hour and a half the other day with Chris Argyle talking about regenerative farms and whether or not they can make it. And maybe they can. I'm learning all kinds of things about chicken poop. But those are the things that we can do. Do we need manufacturing? No. Do we need grocery store at some point? Yes. And I'm totally with Dan. I would love to see Chris's become something really awesome.
Just want to give you an opportunity to answer that same question as well. I know you mentioned Chris's. Any other types of industry that you think you could attract here or would like to come here to this valley if we do need to see a little bit more commercial growth?
You know, I agree with Don on the aspect that I don't want to see manufacturing come here. I don't want to see industrial come here. But what I want to see is more festivals. You know, you build a 5-story hotel and that is permanent. But if you can get like something like the Balloon Festival, it's a bit of a headache for the weekend with so much traffic coming in, but then it goes away and it allows people to experience this and then go home. I would love to do something like Gilroy, California. They have a garlic festival for a whole week. People come in and they have different garlic recipes and there's vendors and there's music. I would love to see that happen, that agro-tourism that's talked about. I want to see an easier process for someone to have a little fruit stand or vegetable stand in front of their house so that they can benefit from that too. Don's right. We have an opportunity for small business owners to get rich off of the tourism that comes in, particularly with the Olympics. And so we should take advantage of that. Honestly, I wish it wasn't coming, but it's here and we need to deal with it properly.
Okay, next topic here. We did talk about this just a little bit, but I want to expand on it a little bit more. Open space, character of the valley. Dan, we'll start with you. How do you balance preserving open land and the rural character with the pressure that has been in this valley for new housing and growth? How do you pair those two?
So like I've talked about a few times, if we can strengthen our farmers, if we can strengthen the farms, then they will sell. As soon as they sell, a developer purchases the land, and then he's going to try to exercise his property rights as he feels appropriate and comes to the council and asks for something to be rezoned. So to me, that's got to be the first part. If we can, to keep our open spaces, they have to be utilized. I like Don's idea of trying to do the easements, of doing trust funds so that people can maybe take advantage of that. The TDRs plays in this also. It allows a farmer to sell his development rights to an appropriate area that we've already distinguished as somewhere that we want to have a little more density, and then they don't feel the pressure to have to sell and get rid of that land.
Yeah, one follow-up. You mentioned strengthen farmers. How do we strengthen farmers?
We can give them incentives to continue to farm. We can make it easier for them to do the farm to table. I love Chris Argyle's idea of doing a touch a tractor day. You know, it allows people to come and the youth to be excited about being a farmer. We have too many people that don't want to go into that lifestyle. And Don's right. It's a difficult lifestyle. You know, both my grandfathers were farmers, and it's not an easy thing. But there is something about tilling the land. There is something about growing your own food. There's something about going out after a couple of weeks or months and seeing a seed that you plant and grow. So we need to help cultivate that in our youth.
And Don, same question to you. I'll repeat the question. How do you balance preserving this open land and rural character with the pressure for new housing and growth?
Great question. I'm a property rights guy. We're all probably landowners here. We have an inherent right to use our property and sell our property if we want to. Constrained a little bit by the land use ordinances. We need to put our money where our mouth is, folks. We yell and scream and we say we want to keep open space and we want these big farms to still be there for our kids and grandkids. Well, how are we going to do it? If you're a land rich but cash poor farmer, how are you going to do that? We need to give them an option. And the option that I believe we give them is this city uses the functions of the city to create a committee or a charter or whatever we want to call it that studies hand in hand with the farmers and the other landowners, people who might donate money, the federal government, the state government who have the grants. And within a year or two, we have a path forward where a farmer can go, an 80-year-old farmer can say, my kids want the land now, and I can say, kids, here you go. We're going to put some of this in a conservation easement or an agriculture easement, and we're going to get value out of that, which can go into a trust fund so the kids and grandkids can be taken care of. And guess what? You still get to till the land. It's still in the family. But somebody has to pay for that, folks. And so at some point, this committee's going to come back to the city and say, here's your options. Somebody's got to be the community part and investing in those easements if we decide to go. A land trust doesn't have 10, 20, 30 million dollars. We're going to have to figure that out.
Don, we'll start with you on this next one. This was a question that I saw a lot of residents ask about. A lot of people don't like the name Ogden Valley City. What do we do about a name?
Did we predict that question or what? I got this, and Susie, thank you for allowing me to use your name. I and maybe others did. She sent me an email last week and said, Don, I just want you to know that I and a bunch of other ladies are putting together a committee to study and think about what the name should be. And those of you who don't know, Susie Wood was part of the naming of Snowcrest. So we've done this before. I don't know what the name should be. I believe that we, the citizens, should have a conversation and figure out what it should be. We've got this beautiful place, but let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Those of us who live in Huntsville District 5, we think of ourselves as Huntsville. Those who live in Eden think of themselves as Eden. Those who live in Liberty think of themselves as Liberty. And HEL is not an option for some of us, as much as some of us would like it. So I think what we'll end up doing is great people like Susie and others will come up with a one-to-many list of names, and we need to have the citizens. It's your city. It's not my city. It's our city. We need to have a referendum or something like that, or we have a process to come up with it. And we need to do it relatively soon, and this thing's going to fester, and we just need to get it done with, hopefully, within the first 6 months.
True story. I'm from Michigan. There is a Hell, Michigan. You can look it up. It has to be paving of the city. Your thoughts?
So, I'm actually kind of in favor of Hell Valley, but I love the energy behind the name. I want to see that same energy behind the bigger issues that are going on in the valley. I want to see that same energy for conserving our water, that same energy for conserving our farms. But I do agree that there is a lot of interest in this, and it's better that we do it sooner than later before we start paying money for signage and letterheads and all that. So I do think it is something that we need to put to bed in the beginning, one way or another. And I think that would probably be best done through this list. I'm waiting to see the results. I saw lots in the paper, and there were some great names there. But, I'd be okay with this as a ballot initiative if we voted on it that way. But once we figure it out, we need to put it to bed and move forward.
Hear, hear.
Dan, we'll start with you on this next question. If once the new city is up and running, you're on the council, developer comes in, maybe buys a big piece of farmland, wants to build this huge, big project. What is your stance on kind of going toe-to-toe with some of these developers that may want to really develop out this valley?
Probably the first thing I'd say to him is you pay for a water study, and you show me that there's water that can support this as well as everything else and not impact the current aquifers and wells, then we can talk. But I agree with Don. We need a water study, and that would be a good way to get it paid for, is to have a developer do it and prove. And maybe we have to do 2 of them, because sometimes studies are just what someone paid for to be told what they want to hear. But that would be the first thing. Because again, I agree. It's his property. He does have a right to request an ordinance change or a rezoning, but that doesn't mean it's guaranteed. And that's the difference between what the county has done and what our new city can do. So if he can prove that there's the resources there, that he's going to take care of, roads, sewer, water, all that thing, then it's a reasonable discussion. But to just say, ooh, I like this tax dollar, I like this revenue, let's go ahead and improve it, that's happened too much, and we've realized that that's not a way for success.
Don, your thoughts on that?
Ask the question again.
Sure, big developer comes in, buys a big piece of farmland up, and wants to put up the new big shiny object in the valley. You're going to have some tough discussions with the developer. What do those discussions look like for you?
Is the shiny object a Smith's or a bunch of houses?
Well, let's start with Smith's, a commercial development.
Okay. So, like we talked about earlier, it is absolutely essential. It's the number one most important thing after snowplows and law enforcement that we're going to have to get done, which is write our ordinances correctly to create this city that we want. And it's frankly the hardest thing we're going to do, because there's hundreds of ordinances out there. So this individual's come to us and said, I just bought 30 acres and I want to put a Smith's. I am a property rights guy, but if it's zoned AV3, I am going to be hard pressed to change the zoning on that to a commercial Smith's against what we decided we wanted in our general plan and for our valley. Is there more of a question?
Now let's say a resort style property or a new community of homes.
Well, resort style property is not how it was zoned, so I'm still going to be hard pressed to go down that road. We have a general plan. We are zoned in certain ways. We want to keep the zoning because that's what we wanted to do. Now, if he comes in and says, I got 100 acres, 3-acre lots, that's, what is that, 33? Well, he bought it. By law, assuming that the ordinances look the way they do right now, he should be approved as long as he does the proof that he's going to have the water and he shows us that he can do the infrastructure. And I can tell you, I see you, no application should get in front of the planning commission and the permitting department until they can prove they got water.
So we got about 10 minutes left. We're going to give you some time to make your closing remarks. So, Don, we'll start with you on this one, since Dan went first on the last question. Long-term vision. In 20 years, what should this city look like, and what decisions need to be made right now to get there?
20 years, I'm focused on the next 2 years. And I'll speak to your question, but in the next 2 years, folks, are critical. We have got to create a functioning city right away. We've talked through, Dan and I, all the things that we've got to do. We've got to create a thing that gives us and our children and our grandchildren some semblance of what we have right now. My plan for the first 6 months after we incorporate, which is take us through June, is we're going to do things wrong. And so those of us who make it through have got to be making sure we learn the lessons and fixing things. In the first year, I want to make sure that all those lessons we learned are now in place, and we've got a city that's actually pretty functional, and we're not the laughing stocks of Utah. I don't think we will, but let's make sure we're not. I want to get those committees going, not only agriculture and water, but I think we should have an Olympics committee so that we get a seat at the table, because 2034 is coming no matter what we want. And within the first 2 years, I really would love to see that this legacy land thing that I've been talking about comes to fruition, and we have ideas that how we can help the large landowners. I would think it would be awesome if we had a community center with maybe a rodeo or something somewhere central in the valley where we could get together. If we have some semblance of what we have in 2034, we've done darn good, and the developers haven't won. 20 years from now, I'll be 80. I don't know where I'll be living.
Maybe still on the council out.
I will not be on the council 20 years from now.
Yeah, Dan has something to say about it as well. So, Dan, long-term vision, same question, 20 years. If you want to reduce that a little bit, by all means do so. But give the voters a sense. What should this city look like, and what decisions need to be made right now to get there?
You know, as far as what needs to be done right now, other than getting the essential services up, is we have talked as candidates about creating a world-class website. A website that allows us to communicate, it allows us to educate, it allows us to be a virtual town hall so people can get their permitting done. We want to create that so that everyone knows what's going on. Because good education, good information leads to good decisions. Now, 20 years down the road, I hope we look as much like we do now in 20 years. I want it to be, it's going to change. I'm not blind to that. But the last thing I want is for us to look like Heber. I want us to look like Midway. If you go up to that valley, there's definitely a difference between Heber and Midway. And I would like to see us keep our open spaces. You know, we are going to have development, but I want it to be controlled. I want it to be in the areas that has already started. I don't want it to spread out and be ugly and obnoxious. I want us to protect our farmers. I love, you know, Don's idea and Chris Argyle, they both talked about having a rodeo. I'd love to see us do those things that strengthen our community, but also bring in tax dollars. And they're still complementary. Again, I don't want the big, ugly buildings. I want something that fits the character. If it's going to be built, it's going to look like it belongs here and that it's been here all along.
Okay, so with just a few minutes that we have left, let's go ahead and do some closing statements. We've allocated 3 minutes to each. So since Dan went first in opening statements, Don, you please go first with your closing remarks.
Thank you, Dan, for being an honorable man and a worthy opponent. This was more fun than I thought it was going to be. I've never debated anybody in my life. I've done a lot of things, but this one I've never done. Thank you all for spending your time with us tonight. Thank you, people on wherever you are, YouTube or whatever that thing is. Thank you. This is not a minor election. We chose a city a year ago. We, District 5, 50% of us said yes and 50% said no. It not by our hand, but in our lap is our future. We get to decide what we are going to do. Right? Think about that. We get to decide what it looks like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and 34 and 20 years from now. We get to decide what the ordinance is going to say, or we're going to put our money where our mouth is and have ordinance that actually slow things down. Or are we going to copy paste, go what Meeker County did and go, oh, we didn't know what we were doing? This is going to be hard. We're already spending 20 or 30 hours a week doing this. I've done hard things in my life. I was one of the war planners in the Pentagon on 9/11. I didn't get home for 4 days. And Stacy had to take care of our 1-year-old for 3 years as we went to war. I've done a lot of hard things in my life. And this is going to be hard. Think about what you want the next 2 years to be. Think about who has the talent, the temperament, and the time to be successful. And I ask you to use that lens for not just Dan and I, but for the mayoral candidates and all the candidates on all the districts. Talent. Do they have the skills, the experience, and the knowledge to do what we have to do in these first 2 years? Because the next 8 years are going to be a walk in the cake. But the first 2 years, those of us who get elected have to build this city. Do they have the temperament to work with people that they've never worked with before? To look across the table with county commissioners who've expressed their disdain for who we are? To work with people who don't look like them, who don't worship with them? I'm not saying Dan is that man. I'm saying ask yourself that question about the 12 remaining candidates. Make sure that who you elect can do the job on day one, because it is that serious and that important to who we're going to be. And then make sure whoever you elect has the time to do it. We're already working 20 or 30 hours a week. And anybody who thinks the first 6 months isn't going to be like that is smoking funky weed from Nevada. It's going to be that crazy. So I stand before you humbly asking for your vote for District 5. I will work my tail off. I've done hard things my entire life, and I really appreciated this opportunity to be with you tonight.
All right, Don Hickman, excuse me, thank you very much. Dan Davenport, you have 3 minutes, your closing remarks.
So I too want to thank everyone that showed up this evening. It means a lot to see these people, to see you here, and hopefully there's 100 times more on YouTube, because we cannot do this alone. This is a Herculean effort. And it's been a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work. And we all realize that. And I think we're both willing to do that. I want to thank Don. It's been a pleasure to get to know him better. You know, he's offered to give me some ice cream at some point, and I am going to take him up on that. Just when we maybe have a second or two that we're not doing something else. But we have the opportunities to have the best days ahead of us. We've been given something rare, even though we were the district that had the least amount that wanted this incorporation. I believe we look forward and we look at this opportunity that we have to have local representatives, to be able to make our own decision. We have a lot of tough choices that we're going to face. And my goal is not to get elected and then shut the door and say, okay, you elected me, I know best, because I don't. But I do have the sense to ask for people's input. I do have the sense to know when I'm not an expert in something and to go to someone that is. And I don't have any issues about being able to go to someone and admit to them, you know what? You're the water specialist, you tell me. You're the farmer, you tell me what's going to be the best thing that the city can do to help you. Where I feel my strength lies is I like meeting new people. That has been the best thing about running for this, is the opportunity to meet new people. And the opportunity to have an excuse. I love knocking on their door and they're willing to open, and I can say, hi, I'm running for city council, can I talk to you? That's not something, you know, if I just knocked on someone's door and said, hey, I want to get to know you better, they'd probably think I was a little crazy. But I like that. And whether we're the same religion, whether we're the same race or we're different, that doesn't bother me at all. I believe that we should be viewed as individuals and for our character. And I can show you just as many people my same old race that are jerks. That doesn't mean anything. And even in my own religion, I can show you people that I'm not too impressed with. But what our strength in this valley is our community. It goes back to what I felt when we came up over that 4th of July. And that's what we got to hold on to. And we need to be united and move forward. And whoever that is, trust in them. And hold us to the fire. Keep giving us your comments. Keep reaching out to us. Keep saying, hey, this is what I want. This is what we need. I'd be very humbled to be the District 5 representative. And I hold and ask for your vote at this time. Thank you very much.
And Davenport, thank you very much. Now, Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe District 5 is, this first term is for 2 years because the districts, the councils will need to stagger. So keep that in mind as you're voting. This particular district will be for 2 years. Then after that term, it goes into 4 years. So that really does it for this debate. Wanted to thank both of the candidates, Dan Davenport and Don Hickert. Thank you very much.